New accessory.
His new baby.
Mm-hmm. And I have chosen the game especially for the podcast this week, themed. I don't recall Super Mario Brothers ever getting a arcade version, but probably did exist by the look of things.
I would imagine so. I feel like it's Mario. It must have gone to arcades at some point.
This is an arcade emulator on this thing, and sorry for people who are listening and not watching. I have bought myself an arcade cabinet,
Yeah.
and it has over 3,500 games on it. And I was quite surprised to find, as I said, Super Mario is on it because it's brothers. And this week we are talking about brothers.
We are, and that's a very good segue, professional segue. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this week we have got a few topics of conversation to go through. We are doing my final of the three chain movies. We are stopping off in Rian Johnson's The Brothers Bloom territory. I've been looking forward to having an excuse to go back and watch it, and Travis finally had to watch it for the first time. We will find out what is happening next for our chain movies, because I don't know. I'm going to be talking about, Travis and I are both going to be talking about first few episodes of The Boys Season 2, and then Travis will talk about Challenger, The Final Flight on Netflix, and I will talk a little bit. There's not much to say about it, in all honesty, some spoilers there. Bad Boys for Life. So, let's get straight on into it and talk about The Brothers Bloom, shall we?
Certainly. Now, this is one of your favorite films, correct?
Yeah.
And what I'm interested in, and maybe it's a good place to start, is what do you love about this film?
Because it is just pure joy. There's nothing phenomenal happening at all throughout the whole film. It's a fairly obvious kind of storyline, but all of the actors, everyone involved in this is clearly just enjoying themselves and having a good time, and I can't help but go on that ride with them. Similarly, for anyone who watched the generally appalling remake of The Lady Killers with Tom Hanks, that movie was awful, but Tom Hanks as the Colonel, and the guy who played J. Jonah Jameson.
Oh, is it J.K. Simmons?
Yeah, J.K. Simmons. Those two, when you watch it, they're having a blast. They're just really enjoying themselves. And in spite of the rest of the movie, I really enjoy that. Whereas with The Brothers Bloom, I also appreciate everything else that's going on around these just enjoyable performances. I don't know if Mark Ruffalo has ever been quite as charming and charismatic as he is in this role. Adrien Brody is his typical kind of moody,
introspective.
Yeah, I guess that's the best way of putting it. Introspective kind of character, but he's still kind of approachable. And Rachel Weisz is just an absolute darling. I love her to bits. And she's just charming and wonderful. Rinko is brilliant as Bam Bam, just really good fun. She does so much with nothing. It's all through her physical acting and just looks. She almost does. It's possibly going to sound derogatory, but Gromit from the Wallace and Gromit series, where he said the dog says nothing, but it's all through his expressions. And
well, you're sort of going back to the tradition of silent theatre there. You know, Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton didn't have the luxury of talking.
Yeah, exactly. And she does so bloody good with what she has. It's wonderful. Robbie Coltrane is just a delight as the Belgian. Everything is just kind of almost borderline pantomime fun. And that's kind of what it is, because the whole premise of it is everyone getting what they want through outlandish circumstance that is manufactured, I guess. And I just thoroughly enjoyed that.
Do you enjoy it as much now as you did the first time you watched it? Does it hang in there for you?
It's not as impressive of an overall director / story project. I think that the con movie and that element of is this real, is this not, was is an area that Rian Johnson likes to play in, and I think that going back to this after his stuff with Knives Out, and even the type of story he was trying to tell with The Last Jedi and Looper as well, I think that he is consistently refining his talents and getting better every time. But this is like kind of going back to I think it's a different skill level, but going back to early Chris Nolan stuff like Following and Memento, it's raw, it's unrefined quality stuff, and going back to it now, it's like, yeah, I can still see that it's great, but he has improved. He's worked out the kinks in his idea of how he tells a story, and it's similar with Rian Johnson. I think he's not quite as good of a director as Chris Nolan, but Chris Nolan is kind of a rare case. Rian Johnson is incredibly talented, and I think this is something that it's very near and dear to my heart because I got to meet him and got to see it at very early stages. But I still think it holds sway as this is a quality film overall. It's not a perfect movie. It's not a phenomenal movie in any respect, but it is a damn enjoyable one, in my opinion.
I didn't like it. That's a shock, I know, and I'm sure the bookies will be paying out big time tonight. It's probably a strong thing to say I didn't like it. I struggled with this on a number of levels. I don't know what this film is supposed to be. The tone of the film is very strange and confused for me. Is it supposed to be a comedy? Because I didn't laugh once. Is it supposed to be? It's supposed to be a con movie. Is it supposed to be tense? I was never on the edge of my seat. If I had a word for the overall vibe of the film that I had while watching it, that word would be smug.
You're not the only person to use that as a descriptor for it.
It's kind of reminding me of a Wes Anderson film.
That's fair.
It kind of reminded me of something like the Royal Tenenbaums, like another alleged comedy. Everything was so good about it that they just forgot to put the jokes in at the end of the day. Like, I mean, oversight, am I right? Who would have thought that a comedy is supposed to be funny? Instead of dull. And I like some of Wes Anderson stuff. I didn't like the Royal Tenenbaums in particular. I thought that was smug. Look at me. I'm very clever. I wrote the script and I got all these big stars to be in my movie about a bunch of boring, depressing people. But this kind of felt the same way. Like, I mean, it's just like I was struggling with, like, what is going on in this film? Not like the story's confusing, but what am I supposed to be feeling here? What am I supposed to think of these people? Like the introduction of Rachel Weisz's character of, when she's driving a Ferrari or whatever it is, and she smashes into a wall, and then 2 minutes later it's getting towed away. And what am I supposed to make of this? Like, it looks like it's kind of set in the real world, but it doesn't feel like it's a real world movie. A lot of it, you used a good word there. Pantomime was a word. It's a good one that sort of summed it up. Like the whole scene on the boat. Yeah. What's going on with that? Like, if there's a giant fucking live band on this tiny little boat going to Belgium, and I was just it disconnected me from the film because I was like, I'm not being sucked into the story here because I'm sitting here going, what is this film? What is it trying to do here? Am I is it trying to look like a play on film? As in a stage show, because it's very stagey in times, like someone had actually adapted a play. But at other times it kind of felt, we're back in the real world again, and real world consequences now apply, and we're actually, real world considerations should be taken into account. Whereas 5 minutes ago it felt like murder on the Nile or something like that on that boat. That really kind of pulled me out of it because I found myself sitting here the whole time going, I don't know what Ryan wants me to think this film is. And interesting when you say he's got better, and I see some connective tissue between this and Knives Out, in the sense that, Knives Out is not a con movie, it's kind of a murder mystery movie. But these two films kind of, to me, feel like cousins. In that they're sort of old genre films that nobody makes anymore. Heist films, straight ahead heist films. No one makes them anymore. It's got to have a twist.
Yeah.
Oh my God, they're all women. What a mind blown. But whereas Knives Out was kind of a murder mystery film again, that's something maybe harkens back to the 40s or 50s as well. But again, he's just sort of put a sort of nice modern polish on that, and an interesting twist on the end of Knives Out there. If you haven't seen that one, get around to it. But this one, yeah, I guess it was that kind of had that twist ending at the end with sorts. But yeah, so I can see we can continue. Like this is maybe I don't know anything about Rian Johnson. But maybe he's a bit like George Lucas in a way, who grew up watching old movies, cult movies, and kind of wanted to do his own version of them. And now Ryan's doing something similar, except he didn't grow up watching Flash Gordon. He grew up watching, whatever inspired. I kind of think for sort of film noir stuff, Double Indemnity, that kind of stuff. And not that these films are noirish, but that kind of mystery story that he's taken on and doing his own version of in these. And I think you're right. He's got a lot better at it, because I knew Knives Out knew exactly what it was. I don't know about the Brothers Bloom. And maybe this is why it wasn't successful.
I think that's possibly the problem. And yeah, to your point of this was a flop, a general flop, and it didn't get very highly rated by critics. It's got, I won't say it's a cult favorite at all, but it's got a group of fans. I'm one of them. But I think the hardest part of this movie is con movies have been notoriously tricky to elicit true emotion and that willingness to drop in, because any kind of con movie, when you go into it knowing it's a con movie as an audience, there's that part of you that wants to work it out beforehand, so you're never fully invested in it. That's where the murder mystery kind of comes in a little bit more, because you get to join in that detective and try and work it out, and you learn things as he learns them. You come up with your own theories. This, I would say, is a romantic con movie, because it not only is it a romance story between these two highly underdeveloped, socially inept characters of Bloom and Rachel Weisz's character, but it's also a romance of an old style of con movie, like The Sting and fuck, the name's completely gone out of my head, but sort of like almost like those Humphrey Bogart style, that era of cinema. And I think that's part of the problem. Is it's like, okay, it's a romance movie, but we don't know if any of this is actually real or not, and that it puts everyone on step. It's really hard to not kind of get involved and get frustrated. Like, you think of the famous romance movies, anything with Tom Hanks, Meg Ryan, Sleepless in Seattle, you get frustrated with them because you want them to get together. Whereas this, there's not that level of frustration of, oh, just get fucking together. It's, okay, lots of things are happening. I don't quite know what's going on. They're just conning her. Is his brother conning him? What? And you just end up getting confused. And I feel like the biggest flaw that it did with its storytelling was not create this storyteller element of Mark Ruffalo's character, where he is described a handful of times, as sort of like writing his cons like the way dead Russian poets wrote epics and things like that. So like, you never really see him doing that. And I feel like if the story was more from his perspective, I feel like it would be better. It's almost like him kind of playing chess with all these different players. But I wonder if that would have given away the twist of everyone getting what they want at the end.
Yeah, the twist was weak, though. I mean, the twist was weak. But maybe it wasn't. Maybe the reason it was weak for me is because by the end I didn't give a shit, and I was completely checked out. I just wanted this to be over. It's too long. There's too much going on, and as you said, there's not enough for me connective story tissue to use that phrase again. And you've made a good example there. So I'm thinking of heist films I've enjoyed in more recent years, and some of the Guy Ritchie films. They're action heist films, but they are, lock, stock. I think at least was to go back a very long time now.
Yeah.
The Ocean's films.
There's definitely, yeah.
But, I mean, those ones are they're a different kind of heist film in the sense they're just sort of pure escapist fun. But I mean, and you're right. Maybe Ryan wasn't trying just to tell a heist film, as you sort of say. He wanted the romantic story to have as much weight in it as the heist did. But I think something needs to drive the story, the narrative forward. And the romance really wasn't, for me anyway, doing that. It was just kind of every time we had a Rachel Weisz, Adrian Brody loves the romantic scene, interest level dropped to 0 for me. Obviously others may have felt differently. But I feel like the heist story should have been a bit stronger to drive it forward. And as you said, I was sort of expecting to see more of that story coming through, whereas it was very much a supporting player. I think it was almost like we got a romance and sometimes they do heist shit.
Well, it's never really a heist because it's a con movie, and I think that con movies and heist movies, especially after the success of the Ocean's movies and the action orientation of so many heist movies now, and even looking at things like Now You See Me and Now You See Me 2, they're con movies, heist movies, they're kind of playing fast and loose with it. It has kind of redefined the genre of a heist movie and a con movie. I don't know if you'd be able to... I don't know if you could make a blockbuster con movie anymore that is an old school con movie. The Sting, I said it before, is a phenomenal film. Absolutely love it. Robert Redford and Paul Newman, thank you. Yeah. Absolutely on fire. Robert Shaw, fantastic as the bad guy.
No, I've never seen it.
You've never seen it?
No.
Oh, it's delightful. You probably hate it. Honestly, you probably hate it. But
it's possible. I do hate a lot of things. You're right. The thing it did surprise me, this film, in one sense, because I thought I'd inherited your superpower for a minute. Because I was so sure that this was going to be a smug outhouse, dirty, rotten scoundrels.
Okay.
Parts of it kind of was, but I mean, I was just expecting it to be the big twist, to be that Rachel Weisz was conning them the whole time. They were conning her.
Oh, yeah.
And in a way, I was pleased that it didn't do that, because that would have been very obvious, because that film's been done a couple of times now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's it kind of stuff was happening, but and you know what? The other film was kind of reminded me of, and this is going to be controversial, I suspect.
Okay.
Hudson Hawk.
I can see that like we said, that kind of pantomime world. Yeah, I can kind of get that.
My head, and plus, I mean, and to the film's negative, I'm sorry to say, but one of the criticisms, I mean, Hudson Hawk had a lot of problems, and it was a lot worse than this film. But one of the problems of Hudson Hawk was stuff just could have kept happening.
Yeah.
And it'd be like, and almost like if they'd written a script, it's like set piece, set piece, set piece, set piece. And they didn't actually bother to actually connect the set pieces. So, or not very well anyway, the connections were weak. And at times it felt like that for me, nowhere near to the same degree as Hudson Hawk. But as I said, the connections between the cool ideas, that we have this really cool bit in Prague where stuff explodes, and it didn't really. Things just seemed to keep happening. Yeah, and I never really, the why things are happening was weak, and hence I didn't care.
That's fair. No, I completely understand your disappointments with it. It is definitely. I feel like it's the big sophomore movie of Rian Johnson, where he kind of pushed a little bit further into that. Aren't I good? Aren't I clever? Haven't I done an amazing thing? That it kind of forgot, oh yeah, it all needs to fit. But for me, it was just a beautiful showcase of a lot of talent doing really enjoyable stuff. I just enjoy it. I don't love it to the point of being my favorite movie because it just reinvents cinema or anything like that. It's just fun.
Yeah, no, I mean that's perfectly legitimate to go to a film, and by no means am I sticking the boots in and criticizing you for liking this film because we all have things that we like and are controversial. Like I'm sure I can't think of it off the top of my head, but there are films I'm sure I like that everybody says are shite. But by no means does everybody say this is shite. This is as you say, there are a lot of people out there for years who've been saying, "Oh, it's an overlooked classic. It's so good. It's such a shame it didn't get an audience." And you're like, well, like I think now I can kind of see it. It's interesting to have seen it in the sense that I don't know if studio executives would have probably looked at this a little bit like Office Space. I remember when you read about Office Space made in the late 90s, they were like, how do I sell this? What is this movie? It's a comedy. It's kind of, I heard it read somewhere, but it's a very sly comedy, Office Space. And sly is hard to sell.
Yeah.
Now, I don't say Brothers Bloom is sly. It's, I don't know what I would describe. Pantomime is a good word. It's a lot of different things in the one package. So exactly, I imagine it would have been difficult for people to come along and go, how am I going to sell this to an audience? Do I sell it as a chick flick?
Yeah.
And I asked my friends last week about that, and I got probably a 9-to-1 response that it's okay to use that term. So, is it a romantic comedy being targeted at a date night audience, or is it a con movie? Do we market it as a con movie and we try and sell it to, I don't know whoever an audience for con movies are, but there aren't many of them these days. But do I try and sell it to the Guy Ritchie audience?
Yeah.
Or the Ocean's 11 audience, but it's because it's not really either of those things. Maybe that's what made it difficult for people to sell.
Yeah, I think that you're absolutely right. It kind of purposefully defies a simple genre rating. It's not a romance movie. It has got a romantic storyline. It's not a con movie at all in the traditional sense of things, because it's Mark Ruffalo's character effectively trying to con his brother into being happy with his life, which that's a very lofty kind of crazy idea to make a con movie out of. The last time someone tried to do something crazy with a con movie, I don't know what that is. Maybe you could argue that potentially they tried a similar thing in Inception, where they're effectively conning Cillian Murphy's character into making his own choice to break up this huge conglomerate company. But then that notion is lost. It's not really the main focus. It is the MacGuffin for them to go into these cool different action sequences, and it happens to tell an interesting story around Leonardo DiCaprio's character and how he's being haunted and that sort of stuff. This, I don't think it cares about any of that. Is it like, what? This is the story that I'm telling, and I don't really care if it has an audience because it's being made. Ta-da!
Which in a way I can support, right? The filmmakers should be able to tell the story they want to tell without interference of going, well, is it going to find an audience? Is it not going to find an audience? Am I going to be able to sell this? I'd be much of a hypocrite if I said, no, he should only make films as he thinks is going to be popular with people, because that's how you end up in a horrible situation cinema has been in over the last few years, as a matter of fact. But yeah, I'm glad I've seen it now. I mean, as I sort of say, it can actually help me sort of see where Ryan's come from. I unlike you, I do not see any, do not understand why they looked at the film like this. Maybe it was Looper that people saw and thought, he'd do good at a Star Wars movie.
I never thought he'd do good at a Star Wars movie. I feel like he is someone who can make a great story in any universe that he makes, but he tells his own stories. That's always the case with every single one of his movies. It's a Rian Johnson joint. Star Wars, getting him into the middle of the franchise where no one had a plan on how they were going to end that saga. No, that's a stupid choice.
In hindsight, it's a bizarre. I'm not saying you said he would be great at a Star Wars film. I'm talking about Kathleen Kennedy and the guys at Lucasfilm were going out and it was him, was JJ, it was him, and then it was the guy who did Jurassic World. His name escapes me
Colin
right now.
Trevorrow, yeah.
So yeah, which is kind of what I'd always. I remember having conversations with people in the '90s, going, "Wouldn't it be cool if they did another Star Wars trilogy?" But instead of this time, they just went out and they got it. The three most shit hot directors in Hollywood, young hot directors. Kevin Smith, Quentin Tarantino.
Robert Rodriguez. Yeah.
Like actually, I'd like to see Rodriguez, but I'd like to see him do a Mandalorian. But yeah, like I mean, it would have been fascinating to see what Kevin did with a Star Wars movie. But
it would see. I think that they would have all done amazing stories in the Star Wars universe, but for continuing and ultimately finishing the saga of some of the most beloved cinematic characters of all time. No, you don't do that. Get J.J. Abrams in, because he is very good at updating and recycling 1980s ideas.
You want company, man. You want people who are going to tug the line, right?
Yeah.
You want competent, talented people, company men, people who pull the party line. Irving Kershner, right? Like, he's not a particularly famous director, but you give him a story. Here's the story you want to tell. You got to make a very good, competently directed story. You want Kevin Smith or Quentin Tarantino coming in, the guys who made their careers on doing their own thing,
exactly,
as opposed to someone like Abrams who has absolutely no sense of creativity or originality in him at all.
Joe Johnson is the perfect dialer director.
Someone like that.
Captain America. He did The Rocketeer. He goes in. He just makes movies that are the safest kind of paint by numbers things, and he gets it done. And if they make enough money to cover it, it's fine. That's what you need.
I don't think Ryan is one of those guys. I think Ryan sort of said it. Ryan is striking me as the kind of, now having seen a few of his films, is the kind of director who, maybe not to the same degree as someone like Quentin Tarantino, which is, who as you sort of is quite not just a great talent, but just very much very distinctive. I mean, you cannot watch one of his films and not know it's a Tarantino film. He can't not put himself in his films, right? Like, in a way, like
all over the place.
It's so distinctive. It's so trademarky. Like there's nothing you couldn't not know it was one of his things. So, but at the same time, Ryan has his own style and his own. As you sort of say, maybe his own style is telling his own story. And telling a story that he thinks needs to be told, and having the characters do what he thinks the character should do. And as you said, that's not what you want in the middle trilogy, the middle episode of the biggest trilogy on Earth, to wrap up the stories of the most beloved characters of all time. Yeah, and just add a curveball that in a trilogy you don't have written out and clearly planned about who's going where and doing what. So we shouldn't have got back into Star Wars. It's just going to keep going for years. It's going to be like World War Z all over again. But it's funny watching this again. I don't know how anybody could look at this and go, he's the man we want to pull the company line and just make the middle chapter of our sequel. Like, no, maybe.
I'm surprised that even he was interested in doing it, Fincher, because he had such a infamously bad time with Alien 3. I'm shocked that he has ever worked on huge budget tentpole movies. And World War Z, it came out in a time when zombies were the hottest thing on the fucking planet. I just don't see him as the right director for that. He's a talented fucking director. A lot of talent involved, but no.
I don't know. I think all of us were surprised when his name was attached to World War Z too, but who knows if that'll happen now because of COVID. Yeah. But maybe I know he gets along with Brad Pitt.
True.
Work with your mates, Sometimes maybe he's getting divorced. I know when I saw John Cleese play in Melbourne a few years ago, he called it his alimony tour. He would make the joke every time. Like, why are you doing this now at your age, John? I've got an ex-wife.
There might be some people out there who think, but there are sort of like really individual voice directors that can work in it. And Taika Waititi was a very good example of that with Thor Ragnarok. But then you look at everything else Thor involved in the MCU, and it was a safe first movie, atrocious second movie. They had no choice. They had no choice but to say, okay, you know what? What we did last time didn't work, so let's do a 180. And they got a director in to do that. And he was very fortunate. It was effectively a soft reboot of the character of Thor.
I think it also a couple of things there. One, you are Marvel in that instance, and you are coming off the greatest hot streak in the history of hot streaks, probably. I mean, even for Dark World, well, it wasn't great. I mean, you can call it atrocious. It was probably atrocious compared to most of Marvel's films, but it still made money. Yeah. And like when they're shit at their worst films are still making decent money. Their best films are making billions of dollars total and making hundreds of millions in profit. You have a little bit more wiggle room to do weird shit, right?
Yeah.
Whereas your first Star Wars is coming off a widely panned prequel, trilogy that nobody really liked.
Yeah.
You've got the new companies taken over, who everyone is skeptical about. You've done the first one. You've been okay. Okay. Everyone was kind of like, yeah, okay, I'll buy the soft remake of The New Hope, but you are by no means with Star Wars in the same position as Marvel, where it can go, I'm going to take a chance. They have a lot of,
true.
And also, I was going to say, they actually, I don't know, it would be interesting to know what came first, Taika or the vision of what Thor Ragnarok would be. We want to reboot Thor, or we want to do Thor as sort of a buddy cop style movie and make play of the fact that Chris Hemsworth does comedy really fucking well.
Yeah.
I wonder if that came from actually we want to do a kind of a comedy, a buddy comedy Thor movie, and let's go. Hey, Taika, because Taika's style worked 100%. It just fit the character and the story they wanted to tell. Now, if they just went out to market and they said, we like Taika Waititi. We really liked Hunt for the Wilder People. We liked What We Do in the Shadows. Taika, if we gave you $150 million in a Thor movie, what would you do? and Taika came back for pitch and said, this is what I do. And they go, done. I mean, because basically, it kind of worked so well for that story. But whereas if you come in with like Thor: The Dark Worlds type story, and then said we're going to hire Taika Waititi to tell that story, then we'd all be like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, surely I had to go to Taika and say, pitch something to us.
Yeah. Because, that's a weird one. I'm curious to see what Love and Thunder is going to be like. So
he's on a good streak right now. I mean, if you were to see Jojo Rabbit, that was pretty good.
Not yet. I do want to see that. I'm interested.
So I've shocked no one by not being a huge fan of Brothers Bloom, but we're going to move on to we talked about it last week, but we were going to try and look at something maybe a bit spooky, a bit horror related. Ooh. And I have got such a horror to pick from now in our chain. We're going to follow the 1994 Brad Dourif classic Death Machine.
Death Machine.
I've checked; it's on YouTube. I didn't put it there, but anyway. So, Death Machine, in which it made in 1994, as I said, in which Rachel Weisz plays the pivotal role of junior executive.
Hey, that at least has it's an officially credited role, whereas Lucas Haas was an uncredited person in the background of the party scene at the very start of the Brothers Bloom.
And I figure I've given if next week, when you want to move sideways and continue the chain after this, you've got plenty of room to move around in, because if we're going to do some horror films in the lead up to Halloween, it's got Brad Dourif in it.
Yeah. There's a gateway to many.
And it's directed by Stephen Norrington, who, of course, best known for directing the one of the more memorable horror films of the 21st century, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. He also worked on Blade.
Yes, he did.
And Alien 3, speaking of which.
He did?
He was the alien creature effects for Alien 3.
Okay.
But he directed Blade, and he hasn't worked since the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. So,
well, that was an absolute nightmare. I mean, the set got flooded away in Prague. Sean Connery was apparently really pissed off about everything. There was a lot of executive involvement. It's a nightmare one. Joe Blow, I know you're watching. Maybe what happened to the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen?
Because it's a cool idea for a story, right? I mean, I haven't read the comic books, but it's a badass idea.
The comic is fucking brutal. I mean, not in the first volume, but I think it's in the second volume. The Invisible Man is fucked up, and he rapes Mina Harker, and you find out that Mr. Hyde can actually see see infrared and see heat signature, so he can see where the Invisible Man is, and he rapes the Invisible Man to death. And he's sitting there. Mr. Hyde is sitting with the rest of the league around a table, and then suddenly all this blood just starts appearing on his body, and they'll go, "Oh my God, what's the matter? What's the matter?" He's like, "Oh, that must mean he finally died." It's like, who? And he explains the situation. It's fucked up. It's a fucked up comic, man. That's Alan Moore for you.
I was going to say, he was a man with a unique vision.
Mm-hmm.
But since we're talking about fucked up heroes, sorts and comic books, should we move on to...
Let's go to The Boys?
Yes. Now, I think 3 episodes into season 2.
Okay, yep.
Now, I kind of had to be in the right mood to watch this because this is not an easy watch, this show.
No.
This is not... He's saying your mama's Justice League. He's saying Super Friends.
Yeah.
As a recap for anybody who's been under a rock and hasn't got around to watching or missed all the buzz about The Boys last year when the season 1 came out, a group of vigilantes sets out to take down corrupt superheroes who abuse their superpowers. Now, this is also based on a comic book, a series of comic books, I guess you would say. Had you read the books before?
No, I hadn't. I think it's a Warren Ellis comic book series. He's really good. Garth Ennis, yes. Really good, really twists those genre types, and never, I don't think ever tells a story fit for young kids. It's always usually very violent, and there's a lot of subtext in everything that he writes. And the first season of this, I think, really hit it out of the park. It was a great show. And so far, few episodes into season 2, they have done away with the subtlety of jabs and things. They are so fucking blatant with a lot of their things.
It really is. I was a bit like, where do you go after that first season? And in season 1, we meet our main protagonist, Huey Campbell, played by Jack Quaid. As he's walking down the street with his girlfriend, wife, partner, I can't remember exactly.
Girlfriend.
And she takes half a step off the footpath before she basically disintegrates. In one of the most brutal scenes I think I've seen in a television show, streaming or otherwise. It was in your face.
Yep. And in Jack's face.
Basically, what's happened is she was hit. Well, essentially, she was run into by A-Train, who is a superhero. He's basically a parody of the Flash. And he is running down the street, and basically by moving at the speed he basically disintegrates her. Huey basically turns Huey against this world of superheroes, and it is superheroes, and he ends up connecting with Carl Urban's character, Billy Butcher, and joins this group of vigilantes aiming to sort of take down this world's version of the Justice League, known as the Seven, which are corporate superheroes. So our superheroes that work for a giant corporation who basically then loans them out to various cities around the world. Yeah. And as the synopsis sort of indicates, they are insanely corrupt and horrible people. We are integrated into their world via the character of Starlight, played by Erin Moriarty, who is a newly joined the Seven, and she's kind of our wide-eyed, innocent person who is, not as corrupt as the world she's entering, and is shocked. Her first experience of the Seven is to basically be sexually assaulted by their version of Aquaman, the Deep.
Yeah.
What I think, so that's this, and the season 1 was sort of all about them trying to sort of hurt the superheroes and track down Billy Butcher's wife, which they do at the end of season 1. I won't spoil what happens at that point, because there is a bit of a cool little twist, and I guess there's a possibility our Russian bot friends may not have got around to seeing it yet. I strongly recommend checking it out if you haven't. Season 2, some of the things that is interesting to note straight away is that where we had Starlight started coming in, as I sort of said, being our wide-eyed, innocent, voice of the audience almost, coming in to explore the world of a Seven, she's become a lot more cynical and a lot darker character in the first few episodes of season 2. Wouldn't you agree?
Embittered, definitely. She's. I feel like, because I've watched a few more episodes of season 2. I have watched the first 5, and she is there is no one in the show that is particularly hopeful.
No, there's not. A few people are redeemable, right? Everyone is a shade of grey.
Yeah, and she's still kind of like the audience's best hope for hope, but you just look at all of the other storylines going on around her, involving her, affecting her immediately or after the fact, and you just kind of look at it and go, all right, there is no way this show can end nice.
There's not going to be a happy ending.
No, definitely not. And it kind of, for me, it kind of colors the watching experience a little bit. It's not so much, okay, what's the roller coaster they're going to put me on now? For me, it's, okay, what fucked up shit am I going to witness? And I'd like a little bit more than that.
I'm not sure. I mean, I guess I don't view it the same way in the sense that, but I think it's maybe it highlights the fault line between the kind of things that I enjoy and the kind of things you enjoy. I enjoy about this show is that it feels real. In the sense, not superheroes, yeah. But like, if you, in the same way that, say, I enjoyed the Damon Lindelof series Watchmen earlier in the year. Which is also a show about the deconstruction of a superhero myth character genre. What do you want to call it? I like to think that if superheroes did exist, they'd probably look a lot like the Seven and Vought Corporation. And whereas I think a classic superhero of a film like something like the Avengers is almost the Star Trek-y version of what superheroes would look like if they existed in our world, right? This utopian vision of, working for the good of humanity when people are inherently corrupt, cynical, and greedy. To the varying degrees. So the idea of them all working together and, it's one force to help humanity is, unrealistic to me.
I'm not against the deconstruction of the superhero at all. I find that that's really compelling, and I love the fact that there aren't really any heroes in this, and there's like the protagonists of this show. That's very nebulous for me because the boys, they're not actually in this that much, and a lot of shit happens to them through reasons. And it's like, okay, let's just ride with the boys so that I can invest more time into them and build up more of that. They're doing really fucked up shit, but look at who they're doing it to. They are a proxy hero. But I feel like there isn't one. It's just I feel like the show should be the fucked up because everyone's kind of fucked up, and it's like, well, here's a different version, here's another one, here's another one. This one's a psychopath. This one has superpowers. This one does not. They're all going to kill you. It doesn't really matter.
That's reality, though, right? Like everybody's working towards doing their own sort of thing for their own reasons. There are no purely good people.
Yeah, but I mean, even just there's no one in it like the boy. I just feel like the boys haven't been given enough time to kind of build up a rapport with me. Really, like the character of Mother's Milk. So, okay, yep, he's got a wife and kids, but why is he doing this? Is he?
Didn't we do all that last season? We did all
that.
We did most of it, right? We got to know them as much as we needed to. I mean, like, we know who these people are now, so we don't think we need to spend a whole lot of character development time now because we know who their characters are, the important ones. You're right, Frenchie and Mother's Milk are supporting characters, so we're not spending as much time on them, at least yet. I will pay it that sometimes their motivation is a bit nebulous this year because, well, I mean, I want to get my wife back. I guess where it kind of falls for me is that, like, you've got the Superman character, Homelander, who is essentially fucking invulnerable. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, the other part of me goes, why does he take orders from anybody? And parts of his show, actually, for me, start to veer into the territory where something like Brightburn should have been playing. Or that fantastic idea that Zack Snyder he had for Dawn of Justice, an idea he actually decided to either he or somebody got rid of. That line from Bruce Wayne in that film, if there's a 1% chance he's our enemy, we have to treat it as a 100% certainty. And I really liked that idea. Like, what would you do if Superman went fucking nuts? And that was what was cool about the idea of Dawn of Justice, which they never did anything with. But, again, we're suddenly in that territory now. What if Homelander decided he just wanted to go nuts and fucking listen to nobody? He could. Maybe they'll resolve that at the end of the season. But part of it, sometimes it just feels like what the boys are doing is fiddling in the weeds, right? Like, you're not really making a huge difference to the people you said to oppose, and I don't understand how they think they will.
That's my thing is, like, okay, how are you going to resolve this? Because what I fear is they're going to just build up what's his fucking name again? Homelander, to this monstrous level and kind of paint themselves into a corner and do exactly the same thing that happens in every fucking superhero story, where the bad guy is so powerful and is so unstoppable that the heroes there's basically no hope in hell of them doing it. So the bad guy then has to become an anti-hero, and they just bring in another character that's like, oh, is the evil clone twin version of you. It got the same powers, blah, 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 and they're even worse. So, hey, on a scale of things, Homelander's not actually so bad, is he? And I worry that they're going to do something like that, because no one in The Boys is going to be able to take him down, because they've not shown any cohesion as a unit. They've not shown any particular ability to execute a plan. And they're supposed to go against essentially a god.
And they have no superpowers. I mean, if I can give a huge spoiler alert to anybody listening who doesn't
spoilers in the chat as well.
Spoilers. I'm going to spoil something that happens at the end of season 2 and an event in end of season 1 and an event that happens early in season 2, but I think might influence what happens towards the end of this season. That's probably not a huge shock if you've actually seen it. But spoilers. I suspect it's going to be Homelander's son's going to play a very large role in his downfall.
Oh, I hope not. I really hope not. Whenever they bring in kids, it's never good. The only one that has successfully done it is Daphne Keane as Weapon X in Logan.
I thought kind of liked what Bryan Singer did with it in Superman Returns. And I know, again,
yes, you've got some weird delusion about that movie. It's fine.
I liked that movie, and I kind of like they kind of kept their powder dry for a really long time in that film until that one kind of scene at the end where he pushes the piano, and you're like, because you didn't even know he was Superman's son. But anyway, that was just my vibe. Is that like, there was that scene in season 2 where he's threatening the kid's mum, and the kid like gets all fired up and shit.
Yeah.
So yeah, that could be
that's the other way that they're going to do it. I think it's going to be one of two things. It's either going to be the progeny or the other one. You know, the sort of like almost telenovela style. Oh my God, I thought you died. I didn't know that I had a twin brother when I was born, and you've got the same powers as me.
That'd be hilarious if it was the same actor but wearing a mustache like David Hasselhoff in Knight Rider. I would be so happy if that happened.
That would be amazing. That has not been done in so long in traditional, in English-speaking TV. I would just love that.
It would be hilarious. But look, I mean, it's good telly for me. It's like it's really well made. The show must cost a fortune to make because it looks amazing. It's dark, which is really me. I'm kind of enjoying the new character who's just joined Stormfront. In the sense that she's instantly, like, you're not quite sure which side of the fence she's falling on, but in the last episode I watched became pretty freaking clear.
Well, they did a gender bend on Stormfront, apparently, from the comics. Apparently, in the comics, Stormfront is a guy. That's all I know. But, she does a really good job, and she's so far she's been an interesting fly in the ointment of the Seven, let alone in the boys' plans. And there's a fantastic chase sequence that involves her and the boys, and it's really well done. It's one of the best action chase sequences on TV that I've seen in a very long time.
I also like that they don't skimp on the content. In the sense that I've said this before in a show, but so many shows now, like the last season of Black Mirror had like 3 episodes, basically a season, 3 hours of telly, and you're like, really, guys? 3 hours? Like an episode for these guys is probably 50 minutes to an hour, 10 minutes of telly, and if you're making 8 episodes a season, you can get away with it. That's over, that's 8 1 hour episode, not 8 9 hours of television. It's a lot. It's enough to sell a pretty good story, and then it's like if you're not skimping out on content where all the shows want to make very very short seasons these days, and so I'm liking that it's a meaty sized episode that I get to sink my teeth into.
That's fair. But
I've been still recommending it to heaps of people.
I would recommend it to people. I think it is worthy viewing. I just think that there are certain types of people that will not like it because it is not your typical, like, there is not that, where Shay recently finished watching her way through Buffy the Vampire Slayer again. This is almost counter-programming to something like that, where you do know that overall, the good guy's going to win. In this one, no good guys.
There are no good. Well, no, you're right. I mean, I was recommending it to some colleagues at work recently, and I was just saying, if you have a problem with graphic violence, don't watch it. If you have a problem with foul language, don't watch it. If you trigger warnings, sexual assault, that kind of thing. If you're just a very sensitive person, don't watch it. It's probably not for you. Gore, don't watch it. Probably not for you. If you suffer from extreme anxiety, don't watch it. It's probably not for you. I know it's just, it's why people watch old shows. Like they rewatch a show like that again and again and again because it's a comfort, right? You know what's happening. So this is not a comforting TV show.
No.
But then again, that's kind of what I like. I don't like, everything has its place, right? But like, if you're looking, most of the time, if I'm not going to be looking for something comforting, and I'm going to look something that's going to challenge me a little bit, and yeah, I get the best of both worlds. I got superheroes, which I like, and I get challenging TV together at last.
Well, it's definitely not going to be getting that combination from the MCU or DCEU anytime soon.
Yeah, about DCEU, they're taking a few risks here and there now.
They're taking more risks and going a bit more mature than MCU. I'll give you that. And technically, yes, Watchmen is a DC property, but it's not in the cinematic DCEU universe yet. At the very least, they are folded into the rest of the DC extended universe in comics and stuff, but you get my meaning.
Joker was pretty challenging, though. Joker was pretty challenging cinema.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm happy they keep pumping out stuff at that level, but either way, we're going to be waiting a very, very long time before we see anything new from either of those studios, just because of COVID. Absolutely. Who knows if we're going to see bloody Black Widow this year or not?
We may. I mean, reports coming in of the success of Mulan's digital release on Disney Plus, and I can only imagine that the next MCU movie would probably do even bigger money than a Mulan remake.
It's actually quite as controversial as some of the things that went on with Mulan and things people have said. But speaking a little on Marvel, did you see the trailer for WandaVision this week?
I did. I don't care.
You didn't find that at all interesting?
Not really. No.
Wow, I think you need to go get yourself checked for a pulse, because that looks really, really fascinating to me. Like, it looks really different.
It looks really different, which is great. But I don't really care about either of those characters, so it's like, all right, I'll wait to see more. There was nothing in that trailer that put me off. There was intrigue, but it's like, okay. It would be like being told there's a compelling story about David Cameron, former British PM. I don't care. I don't care about him at all.
True. If someone's going to tell me a cool story, and they show me a trailer, and with cool story is promised in an intriguing way, I'd be like, oh, you got me.
Okay. Cool story is promised, you say. What's the story?
It got me hinted at, shall I say.
Thank you.
I don't really know what the story is, and I really... Marvel's got the runs on the board. So it just, in Marvel we trust. They get it right 9 times out of 10. They are, to go back to what we're talking about Thor, they're in a space where they can take wild chances now, because it's going to Disney Plus. People in the middle of a fucking pandemic are going to sign up for watch it anyway. So yes, they are two of their less well-rounded out characters. So potentially this is an opportunity to learn a little bit more about them, to give them a little bit more meat on the bone, which is interesting that they're doing it in television, because I also saw that they're saying that Winter Soldier and the Falcon will be going to Disney Plus as well next year.
I think that was always the plan, because I thought it was a mini-series.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. I'm just saying that the other two characters who aren't particularly well fleshed out, who are now going to get, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 hours of story in their own series, whereas, Iron Man's had 3 movies and 3 Avengers movies, and he's been kind of a main star, and Cap's had the same, and Thor's had 3 movies, he's getting 4. So, the lesser, the fringe members, I mean, I wonder if we're going to do, I don't know if I've read it, but they should do something with Hawkeye, because he needs a story now. He's got a lot to tell.
I'm curious to see, if they have this success with WandaVision, there's a Loki TV show that's coming. There's this Falcon and I wonder if they're going to be able to actually tell more compelling stories.
I mean, I've also read, now this is not necessarily going to be immediately evident, but they've now, I think, got the rights back to like Iron Fist and Luke Cage, and
if not now, very soon,
like very, very, like in the this month kind of thing, they get the rights back to those characters, and we know that they real Kevin Feige wasn't real hot on the Netflix universe. It'd be interesting to see, now they've got their hands back on pretty much all their shit, except for Venom and the rest of that Spider-Man world.
Yeah.
And I think She-Hulk. I mean, they're doing a She-Hulk though, so it must have a
right. Tatiana Maslany is going to be She-Hulk, so interesting.
So it's pretty much they've got all their shit back in play now, so it's a pretty sweet spot for them to be in. But I liked the look of WandaVision. It looked fascinating, like they're doing something really quite interesting. With different with those characters. It didn't look like one of those Netflix series which were okay at best, but it really kind of like, oh, okay, it's something different here.
Fair. Now, let's change the topic. I want to hear about, start talking about Challenger, the final flight. I will be back in just a moment.
Okay. Well, Challenger Final Flight is a new Netflix mini-series, which I think has landed in the last couple of weeks. I managed to smash the entire 4 episodes on Saturday this week because it was just grabbed me and it wouldn't let go. So the uninitiated amongst us, who are maybe a little young, maybe a Gen Y, you're a millennial, Gen Z, who don't remember Challenger. Challenger was one of the early space shuttles that unfortunately exploded during takeoff in 1986, killing the crew on board, unfortunately. Now, that's obviously quite an interesting story on its own. Where it does get really interesting is when you sort of start to dig beneath the surface of why it exploded, what actually happened, what went on, and it really starts to uncover a pretty scandalous story about the culture at NASA, the culture of their contractors, and the attitudes of some of the people involved in the decisions around launching the space shuttle. To boil it down, essentially what actually went wrong was inside the rocket booster there is something, basically a rubber ring. It goes around part of the actual rocket booster called the O-ring, and in very, very cold temperatures, that ring can shrink, and in this instance, this is actually the coldest space shuttle launch had ever done. The ring shrunk, the rocket failed, and it blew up and killed everybody. The thing is that they knew, or should have known, but it was going to happen. There were numerous warnings. They were told don't launch a number of times by engineers from the contractor who built the rockets. There had been previous incidents on other flights where the ring had burned through. So there'd been safety incidents in previous flights about this. There'd been warnings from their engineers not to go, and they went anyway. They launched despite these warnings, despite the actual previous incidents. And, of course, it ended up exploding and killing everybody.
Why did they go ahead with it? What was the kind of driving force for them? Was there
they had a schedule.
Okay, wow.
They launch at all costs. There were a number of different elements at play here. It's sort of saying that the culture of NASA was part of a problem. They had this culture of, we're NASA, we're the best and the brightest, we're renegades, and we've always been successful in the past. We put a man on the goddamn moon, right? So that part was part of their culture, that sort of cowboy sort of culture. We were always successful. We're NASA. At the same time as the launch at any cost, we should launch. The default point of view should be, we're launching unless you give me a really good reason not to. And that was sort of the culture. And we've got a schedule we've got to keep. They were set out to launch some ridiculous number of times using. They thought the space shuttle would be able to launch heaps, I don't know, 40, 50 times a year or something like that. Maybe I'm not giving the numbers right. They thought it was going to launch a lot more than it really was. And if they didn't, there was a fear that maybe they would lose their funding. And, why are we funding this thing? And shuttle's not as successful as you thought it was. So all of these things sort of come into the mix of, the culture at NASA, which was launch at all costs. The engineers said it's too cold, don't launch. And, they basically pushed back at them and said, no, I think you're wrong. Go away, come back with some more information. And they the engineers were overruled in a way by management to say no, just do it. And it was such a rubber ring inside the rocket booster that failed, and that's what killed them all. This show, so there's a few. So obviously, it's a four episode mini series. So there's a lot of different stuff until we meet a lot. We learn a lot about the astronauts who are on the shuttle. This was a very notable launch because it involved the first civilian being sent into space. The teacher called Krista McAuliffe was being the first teacher in space, and it's actually a little bit like the Simpsons episode where people are losing interest in the space program. Let's go and get some normal people to come, and that would to sort of
That's instantly where my head went. Yeah,
it's actually what happened. They actually did it for that. They wanted to get people interested in the space program again, and they thought, well, if we get a civilian, a teacher involved, then there was a significantly higher degree of public interest in this launch. And if there was a rumor going around, but apparently the next launch, if this one had been successful, would have been to put a kid in space.
Oh shit! Okay.
Who knows what would have happened with that? So we do spend a lot of time learning about Krista in particular. She's kind of, I guess, the focal point because I guess, the other guys were, military mostly. So as horrible as it was that they passed away, but I mean, you do take a little bit more of a risk when you are in the military, I guess. But what's really special about this show? I mean, the reason it interests to me is I remember Challenge. That's how fucking old I am. I can remember it. And I remember because I wanted to be an astronaut when I was a kid. And this was kind of really big news at the time. This wasn't what put me off being an astronaut, by the way. Someone once told me, well, if you're going to be an astronaut, you need to be really good at maths. And I'm like, oh. So I guess I'm not going to be an astronaut then. I think it was supposed to encourage me to do better at maths. In the end, I just went, yeah, I suck at it. I'm not going to do it. And now I can't even watch First Man, the Ryan Gosling, Neil Armstrong film without feeling incredibly anxious at the space flight scenes. I'm like, no. So I would have been a poor astronaut, but I remember this happening. So that was what interested me greatly to start watching it. But what kept me interested was it's really well made. So the quality is out there. They've got amazing footage in this, from a wonderful amount of sources. But I think the real piece de resistance is the access to people they've spoken to. The amount of people involved in the actual incident who are still alive is amazing. Like most of the people, the key players seem to still be alive. Most. And most of them, if not all of the important people, have agreed to talk to the filmmakers.
Cool.
And so not just people who are like obviously there's the guy who was the engineer who said one of these things is going to explode one day, don't launch. He worked for Thiokol, which was a contractor. He's been on TV for the last 30 years going, I told them. So he's a pretty well-known face and name if you've seen that kind of thing before. But there are the people who made the call to launch, the people who overruled the engineers and said launch, the people who knew about the risks and launched, are interviewed in the show. And I'm like, whoa, that's the dude. You're the dude who said go. And I'm like, why is he talking to them? I mean, that's traditionally you would say this show doesn't make them look good, right? The show is saying they kill people. Yeah. Normally they wouldn't talk to the filmmakers if they've done something like that. Normally they'd be fairly, standoffish and, media shy, but they talk to the actual filmmakers about the decision. And what is stunning is they actually are still sticking to their positions. Wow. If I had my time again, I would make the same decision, one of the guys said. I'm like, how can you possibly say that? I mean, he's sort of saying, what he's saying is if I had the same information in front of me now as I did then, I would make the same decision. And I'm like, that's, yeah. So it's worth watching for that alone. It's quite maybe sort of look up and go, did he just say, wow, okay. Do you have any interest in things like the space program? If you have any interest in, if you like air crash investigation, it's a little bit similar to that in parts. Maybe if you just remember this happening like me, it's a really well-made little documentary. I enjoyed it immensely.
Cool. Okay. And that's on Netflix?
That is on Netflix now. Yes, all 4 episodes.
All right. Nicely done. Is it by, do you know much about the production? Like, is it by any other, have they done any other documentaries that you're aware of? Or?
Well, it's by two directors here. We have Stephen Leckart and Glenn Zipper. None
Mm,
of these names scream out to me
mm,
as being people I know. Yeah, I'm just quickly looking through their IMDb sort of credits.
mm.
There's nothing in here that particularly stands out as something that I know I've seen before.
Okay.
Stephen, sorry, Glenn Zipper worked on a series called Mike Judge Presents Tales from the Tour Bus. I think we reviewed that once on the show
Yeah,
before, which is like it's a weird one where he interviews musicians, but the whole thing is animated.
yeah.
So
That's right.
they shoot interviews and then animate the. Yeah, it's kind of cool. I like it,
Mm.
but yeah, no, I'm not particularly familiar with a lot of their work as directors. So maybe they're fairly new to the game, but I think they're on the right track because this was good stuff.
Now, going completely changing topic. My last thing that I'll have just a few things to say about, not too much, is the latest installment in the Bad Boys for franchise, Bad Boys for Life. Now, I'm sure that everyone is aware of what the Bad Boys movies are. They are Will Smith and Martin Lawrence cruising around Florida, blowing it up, not giving a damn about collateral damage, and having a very, very, very loose story pulling them along on this journey, usually involving some kind of comedy about Martin Lawrence being essentially this generation's "I'm too old for this shit." Um, Bad Boys for Life is one of those movies that has been in soft development for a long time. They got Michael Bay back to produce and have a brief cameo, but they got two new directors. They got Adil Abi and Bilal Falal. Falah, sorry. They go just by Adil and Bilal. They have an interesting directing style. Its aesthetic is very Michael Bay, but there's a little bit more creativity behind the camera, which is kind of nice. And apparently, people liked it enough that they've greenlit Bad Boys 4, 5, and 6.
And Beverly Hills Cop 4, they are down to direct.
Yeah, when are people going to realize just one at a time? It's fine, one at a time. Unless you're fucking Kevin Feige, you're probably not going to be able to organize it well enough. But anyway, they do bring a certain level of freshness to the direction of it, which is quite nice. And they do bring in. It's nice to have. I don't know whether it's just me putting it on it, but it felt a little bit different to your typical Hollywood action movie. It didn't feel like your typical Michael Bay. There's aesthetically all of the beautiful girls and the sports cars and all of that stuff. The kind of Hollywood pantomime version of Miami. It's all there, it's all present, but they do some nifty things with the camera sequences. The casting is relatively good. It's at least interesting, but the story is boring as fuck and so goddamn generic. It's unbelievable. It is really, really sad. Miami detectives Mike Lowry and Marcus Burnett must face off against a mother and son pair of drug lords who wreak vengeful havoc on their city.
Wow.
Yeah, and
It sounds like a McBain movie.
yeah,
Mendoza!
it kind of is, and there's a twist in it about who the son is, and spoilers for anyone who cares. It's Will Smith's son,
Uh,
and it's like it all ties back to that, and it's so painfully derivative as a story, and no one particularly does a bad work in this. Like Martin Lawrence is annoying as he always is, but it's fine. Will Smith is generally charming as he usually is. He's a bit of a dick in this, but Vanessa Hudgens is in it. I didn't recognize her at all. There's a lot. This is like if they got like a TV version of Miami Vice, put more money into it, and had a little bit of Blade 2 injected into it in the way that it's like, oh, there's a special unit designed to hunt the main character, and they're all badasses. Look at all of them. They've all got cool names and interesting backstories that we're not going to tell you about. They kind of do that with this. It's like, okay, they've just introduced a group called Ammo that are the next generation of law enforcement. And it's like, oh, come on. Really? You're just going to introduce them like that? And oh, what a surprise. There's beef between the bad boys and their way of doing it and the tech way of this Ammo group. Oh, but then the Ammo group, all of their training, all of their experience, all of their just general antagonistic nature to bad boys, it's suddenly like, nah, bro, we're going to do it your way, motherfuckers, because that's how it gets done. Really? Really? You're just going to piss it all away just so that you can have a fight sequence. Okay, fine. Take me on that ride. Whatever.
Well, I mean, people who sign up to watch these films, they expect certain things.
Yeah, and that certain thing is obvious, boring, and you could get it anywhere. But
I would have thought that was obvious. I've never seen any of these. I've never seen any of the Bad Boys films.
Bad Boys 1, it was at the time fun because it was fresh and relatively new. Bad Boys 2 is awful. Bad Boys for Life is fine, but they really should have saved the title of Bad Boys for Life for Bad Boys 4.
What number 3 have been? Requiem? Bad Boys Requiem.
Bad Boys, the last bad boy. No, that's for number 6. That's for number 6.
Bad Boys Revolutions. I don't know.
Bad Boys Reloaded.
That actually would work.
Exactly. But yeah, it's on Amazon Prime Video, and so if you've got that, if you've got nothing else to watch, if you're looking for dumb fun, go for this. I reviewed 6 Underground, which was the Michael Bay, Ryan Reynolds Netflix movie from much earlier this year. This is better than that in so many ways, which doesn't say much. But yeah, it's a perfectly good streaming movie for when you are bored out of your fucking brain because you've been stuck indoors all day.
I think I'd rather play Mario Brothers.
Yeah, so not everyone has got 3,500 games.
The main problem is there are so many games. You start playing one, you're like, cool. What's next?
Well, you need to make like essentially a magic 8-ball of what game should I play.
I could. There is a list. I could just dump it into a random number generator, but it would just distract me from my real purpose here, which is to play Battletoads.
Why do you want to go back to Battletoads?
I never played Battletoads before. It's legend.
There's a good reason it's awful.
It's legend preceded, and it really wasn't that bad. I mean,
there's a level that you basically can't complete. There's one of the mini sewer levels.
Oh, I played it for about 10 minutes.
They've recently come out with a new Battletoads game on the Xbox Game Pass. Yes,
I heard, and apparently it's not very good.
What a surprise!
Well, I mean, they're keeping with tradition.
Speaking of games, do you want to talk a little bit about the Xbox acquisition of Bethesda?
Look, I mean, it's been done to death. I mean, every man and his dogs had their say. I'd heard they'd been on the hunt for somebody to buy. I mean, they bought Obsidian last year or the year before. It was rumors going around that they were looking to buy Warner Brothers games at one point in time. Mm-hmm. I'd heard whispers that they were, even at one point, EA was maybe something they were looking to buy. But it seems unlikely because that's so big. But I mean, I'm an Xbox person. I've owned Xboxes since I think it's the only consoles I've ever owned. I don't think I ever actually owned it. Nintendo. I done Nintendo a very long time ago, but I've got an Xbox One. I've never really got into PlayStation. I have one because I thought I'd try all those games that everybody wet their pants over, and I was like, yeah, they're okay. So I would be theoretically looking to buy the next gen system. I'd be looking to buy would be one of the Xbox Series S or Series X. But I won't be because there's absolutely no reason to buy one right now. All the games they're publishing on the new console will be published on the Xbone as well. So, but where they suffer, and a couple of months ago we talked about it when they had that they had their the press conference thing and they showed their showcase.
Yeah.
And their showcase was pathetic. There was nothing new or interesting in there, but with no console sellers. When PlayStation goes out to market and they've got a new Spider-Man game and you've got a war game, plus a whole bunch of others, the Xbox has got, and they're all exclusives to PlayStation, right? And Event Horizon Zero Dawn, was that the other one? But there's a new one of them anyway. Xbox has got nothing. They've got Halo. The new Halo looked like trash, and now it's been delayed by a significant period of time, so it won't be anywhere near at launch. So I think the guys at Microsoft, if they want to keep staying in the game, have realized that unfortunately Sony have raised the bar on this, and exclusives seem to be back where it's at now. So they have no exclusive to speak of for some reason. I don't know why they've let that happen. So, I mean, the fact that they own Obsidian, they own Bethesda, they own id Software, they own Arcane Studios, all in this acquisition, means does Elder Scrolls 6, do you get that on Game Pass only? Do you get Fallout 5 only on Game Pass? Doom Eternal 2 only on Game Pass?
What really stands out for me is starting this winter or this Christmas period, EA Play is going to be part of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, and all of those games from Bethesda Studios, all for like $15 a month. Holy hell, that is one hell of a service, and especially.
Great value.
Yeah, and especially when you're looking at lots of the next gen games are already going to be in the US, they're going to be pushing $90, and you think, whoa, okay, so I could buy 2 games, and it'll cost me more than a year's supply of all of these other games. That's an insane amount, and I'm absolutely with you. There's no launch game for either of the 2 consoles that has got me champing at the bit to go, I have to have that console straight away. I need to play it.
I know a lot of people are that way, though. A lot of people in the PlayStation camp are feeling that way about the games that they're launching with.
Absolutely right. It's there's again, I think all of those games that got announced are also being on the PlayStation 4 because we are in that honeymoon period of like 12 months to 18 months where most of the big releases are going to be on both systems because the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 have just got more units out in the wild than the other 2 will have. And so they want to put where the mass audience is. That's one of the reasons why for so long people were still putting games out on the Nintendo Wii, and even still are to this date. Because there's just so many of them out there, it just covers the cost of production for that particular one. You'll get all the fancy visual upgrades and quicker loads and things like that on the new consoles, which is great. But otherwise, if you are someone who is gaming on a budget, why spend $600, $700, $800 on a new system when there's not really going to be any console exclusive games to those specific next-gen consoles? Like the next Assassin's Creed looks great, but again, it's coming out on the current consoles. Cyberpunk looks great on all of the software that we've seen. They've been saying, running on PlayStation 4, running on Xbox One. Great, cool, I'll play that on my Xbox One. I don't know.
Well, it's you're right. Like I said, I'm not gaming on a budget. I am not gaming on a budget over here. But I don't need to buy one. Like, I mean, there's nothing coming. It's literally, it's actually a very strange choice by Microsoft. It's a very pro-consumer choice by Microsoft, which is their space. They own that space now. It's pro-consumer.
Yeah.
PlayStation have just completely left the field there. I don't care. They're going to try and get by on their exclusives, and it's going to be. That's really because it's kind of changing the battlefield for this generation, in the sense that PlayStation's going to go out to battle on. We have the best exclusive games, whereas Xbox is going to go. We have the most pro-consumer. We have the best value for money, significantly better value than any PlayStation Network. It doesn't even their thing. Whatever PlayStation version of Game Pass, don't even think it's even available in Australia.
No, not yet.
So,
and even then, it's they're saying, backwards compatible with 99% of PlayStation 4 games. So, okay, cool. But what about all the other games? Why? And if they aren't doing backwards compatibility, then they need to release PlayStation Now worldwide so that everyone can do that stuff, can do that service, but they just not for whatever reason. But yeah, I really like the fact that there is differentiation between the consoles in that style. Like PlayStation, as you say, it's exclusives. It's kind of boutique, high-end shopping of games. You know, they've got that high budget. They look like high-profile animated movies. They've got that production value to them. Not necessarily my cup of tea, but you cannot deny how amazing they look and the mass amount of people that love them. They're clearly great games. They're just not for me. Whereas Xbox is going to be such good value. I mean, over here, Telstra are doing $45 a month to get the console as well as Game Pass Ultimate, which is amazing.
Undeniably brilliant value. And now, and to come back to your original back around, if it eventuates that, you know, moving forward, if you would think straight away in the next couple of months, all of Bethesda's back catalogue will be on Game Pass if it's not there already, which I don't think it is. So all the Fallout games, all the Doom games, Quake, you know, Rage, all that stuff is going to be on Game Pass, which just adds more value for money because these are some very good games in there. Then moving forward, like I said at the start, does that mean in 2032, when Elder Scrolls 6 is finished, you know, is that only on? Let's say 2 years from now, because you kind of want to get a wriggle on it. It's been in 10 years almost now since Skyrim. Yeah. So, you know, let's say in the next couple of years, within this console generation, if you want to play Elder Scrolls 6, sorry, PlayStation people, you're going to need to play it on PC or Xbox. Yeah. And if you're on Xbox, you know, all of a sudden, day one, it's on Game Pass with you.
That's it, yeah. What's going to be interesting for a lot of these games as well, especially with the last couple of years of Bethesda, where so much of their kind of great quality extra stuff has been coming as DLC. Like you look at Elder Scrolls Online and all of the stuff around that. If that comes to Game Pass as well, that's a lot of content for just one game there. But then you've also got Fallout 76 with all of those updates and additions. You've got all of the DLC content for Doom, for Wolfenstein, for all of those things. If that's just all readily available when it comes out, it's on Game Pass. Just even if they don't make those games exclusive, it's so much cheaper to play them on Xbox.
Exactly. Even if they do let PlayStation have it, right? If it's available day one on Game Pass, that's going to get a lot of people to start thinking, "Wow, I do like the Spider-Man games, but geez, you know, if I want to play Starfield, Elder Scrolls 6, whatever comes next for Fallout, whatever comes next for Quake." They're all day one available on Game Pass. you're right. They're going to be $90 games.
Yeah.
In the US, it certainly starts to. He certainly starts to ask questions in people's minds about, well, is it worth at least buying an Xbox so you can do that, right? I mean, depending how many games you buy, it starts to pay for itself eventually.
Yeah, and that's it. There's legitimate reasons why you could have all three consoles, because Xbox, if you just want to be able to dip into any game that is out, any big game, any of the small indie stuff, it's going to make its way onto there. And you've got this huge catalog of games to be able to play. If you want to play those more kind of blockbuster style games, then PlayStation is kind of your go-to place for all of the stuff that's coming out. And if you love JRPGs, PlayStation is still one of the very best places to go. They announced Final Fantasy 16, which is crazy that they're already doing that. It feels like Final Fantasy 15 took 20 years of its own. But if you want to play those kind of like big budget blockbuster games, you're kind of going to go there, because at the moment you're not really getting those exclusive big blockbuster games from Xbox Studios. They're coming, I'm sure, but certainly not in the next couple of years. And then if you want something which is just fun for that couch co-op, or just being able to take it wherever the fuck you want, the Switch.
Yeah. So you've got three very different value propositions now across the three main candidates of consoles. And the other thing we haven't even talked about here is Xbox Game Cloud.
Yeah.
Which is coming to Australia soon.
But it's still not on Apple.
Well, fuck Apple, really? I mean, if you're stupid enough to own an iPhone, then your problem, really, because they suck.
Shut up, you.
The lawsuit between Apple and Epic Games right now is fascinating.
Yeah.
It actually raises some interesting questions, right? Like, Apple sound a fuckload like they're a monopoly. You want to sell your product, you sell it our way, and we take our cut. That's very anti-competitive. I'd like to see them lose.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're not going to get in that rabbit hole because I'm not a fucking lawyer. If I was, you think I would be doing this for free.
This is purely your cover.
And my secret identity.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think that brings us to the end of our show. A little meatier than last week because, we had shit to talk about this week. Next week, we are going to be talking about Death Machine, care of YouTube. I think I've already picked out where we're going to go next after that.
I would say the main choice is, like, I saw this, it was a chain, and I saw Brad Dourif, and I thought, George is going to take us somewhere great with Brad Dourif in the world of scary horror films. I mean, I don't even know if it's a Brad Dourif film, but he has plenty of places to take us.
I've got some ideas. But that'll be our chain movie for next time. We talked about our early thoughts on The Boys Season 2, Challenger, The Final Flight on Netflix, Bad Boys on Amazon, and we touched a little bit just then on the state of the next generation consoles. But if you have any questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, interests, please sound off in the things below, and we will see you next time. Good night.
Good night.